Welcome to another DK Custom Products video. I'm Dwayne and this is Melissa, and today we have an FAQ, a frequently asked questions video for you guys. As a lot of you guys know, we answer every single comment in these YouTube videos, and so we get a lot of questions and we're going to share some of those more relevant questions with you guys today.
One of the most simple and easiest ones that we've been getting a lot of, so we're just going to address it now, is have we made floorboard extensions for the 2026 models?
Right, those are those Gen 2, the Generation 2 Milwaukee 8s. They made some very subtle changes, but fitment has changed drastically because of those small changes.
Yeah, one thing being that the fairings go all the way down past your floorboards now. So putting floorboard extensions on with those lower fairings covering the floorboard bolts is making it a little problematic to find a way around it.
Right.
We are working to do that, but at this moment we still have not come up with a solution. You can, however, if you don't want your lower fairings, take your lower fairings off and install the floorboard extensions. They do fit, they just don't fit with the fairings.
That's right, and that's one of those subtle changes I mentioned earlier. The lower fairings kind of swoops backwards and it covers the floorboard support brackets. So when you space them out, they touch the lower fairing, flexes that out. Now, we don't know what would happen if you just ride with the fairings flexed out like that. I wouldn't risk it. You know, it's a painted plastic part, might break. But, you know, maybe in the future we can do a 1/2-inch extension and make that work. Or maybe we can space the lower fairing out. But we're working towards that, so stay tuned for those developments and floorboard relocations for the Gen 2 models equipped with lower fairings.
Okay, another question that we have is from Azil. I have some Python slip-ons for my 04 1200 Sportster. Your web page says I can use these with and without baffles. What works best?
That's sort of a very broad question because there's so many factors. You know, how much exhaust volume you have, the length of your exhaust system, you know, what cam you have, timing, fuel management, tune overall. But don't overthink it. The inserts, if you put them in there, they're going to be a positive improvement. The results can only be positive. Doesn't matter if you have a baffle or not. A lot of times the baffle has to be removed for fitment of the insert in there. A lot of times the baffle can't come out because it's attached to the tip and you don't want to run those wide open without a tip. So you would mount the insert into the baffle itself. More often than not, getting the baffle out of there, creating a more free-flowing exhaust system while not inviting reversion by way of installing the Thunder Torque insert is going to be the best overall, but it's also very loud and you might not want to piss off your neighbors. So there's a lot of situations where you may want to leave the baffle in there and pair those baffles with the smaller Thunder Torque insert. To put this into perspective, the TTI, the Thunder Torque insert, it is a baffle in itself. It's just a differently designed baffle. So it's up to you to kind of determine, do you need more baffling or less baffling? But again, if you can get them fitted in there at or near the exit, the results can only be positive, and that's with or without a baffle in place.
One good thing to note with that is that if you cannot see through your baffles, then you cannot install the Thunder Torque inserts.
Yeah, a lot of baffles are like a plug style baffle, like the factory baffles, for example. Like if you pulled that slip on off and you held it up to the light, you can't see all the way through it, the inserts are not going to be effective. You need to gut those, get those baffles out of there. And again, create a more free-flowing exhaust system so that the inserts can do their job, capture that exhaust gas velocity, speed it up, prevent exhaust reversion, build low and mid-range power. And here's a very common question we get because one of our flagship products, one of the most notable products that we are very well known for is external breather systems. That's non-EPA compliant breather systems. As a lot of you may know, the way your crankcase vents now, pressure builds. Because of the EPA pushing all that hot, oily, oxygen-depleted gas, they don't want any atmosphere, so it feeds into your intake, compromises your performance and longevity of your engine. And you know, we're not fans of the EPA, so we don't do our air cleaners that way. We also offer provisions to vent your factory or aftermarket externally, and that's the root of this question here from J. Rowe. I do have a Screaming Eagle backplate. What EBS or external breather system do you have that I can use?
Well, we have a lot of external breather systems, and that's one of the reasons we get the question, what external breather system can I use? It really depends on your setup, your backplate, and there are so many different kinds of backplates and different kinds of air cleaners. Some of them have standoffs attached to the backplate, some of them do not.
Right, and sometimes those air cleaners are attached to the heads, the head breather ports directly. Now you got to think to yourself, it is this simple. If there's already something attached to those heads, you can't attach other hardware to the heads. It's already there. You can't stack these things on top of each other. You can't space the air cleaner out and put Banjo hardware behind it. So with those air cleaners, particularly with Screaming Eagle, a lot of times you have to drill and tap into them and reroute that breather system. And the easiest way I like to explain this is, don't think of it as a vent. Think of it as a drainage system. So just for example, the Screaming Eagle Stage 1 is the most popular systems out there. If you go to a bike rally, the vast majority of bikes are going to have that Harley Stage 1 air cleaner on it. And the way those vent, or the way those expel that pressure, is oil and crankcase vapors just accumulate in the standoffs that are attached to the heads. And then they drain via these little passageways into the back plate and feed the intake. There's no way to attach a hose there. There's no way to bolt any hardware there that's going to reroute that. You have to drill and tap into it. And this is one of the big things we explain in that link that Melissa mentioned below, where we put up a whole report with a little tree chart. You know, if you have this air cleaner, follow this. If you have this one, follow this. And you can see that in the description below. That's helped a lot of people out. And as always, if you have questions about fitment of an external breather system onto your particular air cleaner, just shoot us an email, support@dkcustomproducts.com. Now, if it's some off the wall, you know, Amazon or Temu air cleaner, we're not going to be knowledgeable in fitment on that. So send us a picture. That always cuts down on the back and forth asking questions. And the vast majority of air cleaners out there on this planet can be vented externally one way or another. It's just a matter of, can I bolt something to it, or do I need to drill into it?
Yeah.
Now, moving on, these questions are kind of all over the place because we're not, you know, there's companies out there that make suspension. There's companies out there that make air cleaners. There's companies out there that do foot pegs. We're sort of, you know, in everything, you know, and we make air cleaners, we make suspension, we make this, we make that. And so moving on from air cleaners venting externally, let's move on to suspension. Is the Racetech springs, along with the Intimidators, better for a 2011 Tri-Glide versus the progressive springs? And that comes from NL Ryder. He's a viewer that leaves a lot of comments, asks a lot of really good questions. And what he's asking is, do our Intimidator valves work well with the progressive spring upgrade or the Racetech spring upgrade? Like, what's better for his particular 2011 Tri-Glide?
Well, I think that's going to be dependent on what he's looking for with his ride. I mean, if you're looking for a more aggressive ride, then the Racetech springs is what you're looking for. If you're looking for a more softer, plusher ride, then the progressive springs are going to do better with the Intimidators.
That's right. And a lot of people don't realize a happy medium is the factory springs. Most of us here at DK, we run the Intimidator valves with the factory springs because they're not too aggressive. They're not too plush. But, you know, it's hard for us to say what's better for you because you might be looking for a very plush ride. And that's going to come from those progressive springs. So for you, Mr. NL Rider, if you're looking for comfort, go with those progressive springs paired with the Intimidator valves. And that's going to get you damn near the best end result that any dollar spent on front suspension can get you. Those Intimidator valves, especially when you upgrade the spring, the results are arguably better than $1,500 cartridge setups out there. I know it's a little biased coming from me, but look it up. Check the forums. Google Intimidator valves. You'll see what I mean. You
could also look at the reviews on our Intimidator page. All of our reviews are from our customers.
Yeah, and just to build on that, just to build on, a lot of people are a little apprehensive, like, how is this valve going to drastically improve my ride quality? The best way to understand improvements on Harley is to understand how much room for improvement there is. The way the Harley front suspension rebound dampens right now is fluid, forces itself in and out of a hole. So that's when you're hitting big bumps. That's with chassis input, wheel input, small bumps, small road vibrations, or small road noises, we call it, all just wide open, one size fits all valving. The way the Intimidator valves work, it's a series of shim stacks and a check valve system that responds to input. So they're wide open, and it's very wide open, soft ride quality when you want it to be. But when you hit a bump or dip or grab a handful of brakes, the valving tightens up and responds accordingly. So, I mean, that's what I mean. It's just so much room for improvement upon the factory design that the difference is night and day every single time.
Yeah. And here we have a question from Phyllis B598. My Banjo bolts come loose and I don't want to over tighten them and break them. So I just put it back together with some blue thread lock on it. I hope this is okay. What are your thoughts? We don't usually suggest that you put Loctite on breather bolts because your heads get hot and Loctite starts breaking down at 300 degrees.
Yeah. Now, there are some high temp thread lockers out there, but that's overkill for these bolts. They get tight to about 120 inch-pounds, so they don't get very tight. So you don't necessarily need the thread locker to keep the bolts tight, but understand that oil accumulates in those heads.
Yeah.
And these aren't pipe threads. It's not a tapered pipe thread. So what you need is thread sealant.
Yes. Like Teflon tape
Exactly.
or Teflon paste, one of those two. They don't really break down with heat, and they help hold the bolts in with all the vibrating that's going on.
Right.
And keep them from backing out whenever you're having that issue.
Right. And most importantly, in particular, they prevent seepage going around those threads, because Harley's machining tolerances, a lot of you guys, it's not a surprise, it's very loose all over the place. Our Banjo bolts or our breather bolts, they're machined to precision. So sometimes it's a very loose fit. So a couple wraps of Teflon will create a more tight fit, keeps the bolts from backing out, prevents seepage, and it exceeds 500 degrees operating temp. So it's not going to melt the Teflon tape. And if you pull your bolts out now in their factory, you're going to see that Teflon paste. That's what
Already
the factory
on
uses.
them, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what's the next question? We keep jumping from suspension to air cleaner, suspension, external breathers, back to suspension. What we got next?
Those have been the most common questions recently. We have a question from Aaron. I have 2 questions for my 22 Tri-Glide. I usually ride solo. Once the shocks are adjusted for my weight and load, what, if any, changes need to be made if I add a passenger, and why? Also, I have seen replacement shocks with and without a lift kit. Do your shocks need a lift kit, and why?
All right, so it's a 2-part question. We'll start with the first part first. He's asking, basically, do I have to make adjustments to your shocks when I add a passenger? And that's the answer is yes and no. Understand that our shocks, we'll talk about the 13-inch shocks, they have 4 inches of suspension travel. I'm not going to name any other names of competitors, but if you look up the specs, the next best thing out there has 3 1/4 to 3 1/2. That whole extra ½ inch of travel, it gives you a buffer zone, right? So on a shock like factory that have about 2 inches of travel, if you don't add preload to support that extra weight, you're going to eat that travel up and bottom those shocks out. Well, when you have 4 inches of travel, you have expendable travel there. So, we can set them up for you riding solo, then you add the weight of a passenger, depending on that passenger's weight, and still go out and ride and not bottom the shocks out. You have so much expendable travel there that if you're bottoming out 4 inches of travel, you're hitting some significant bumps that you probably shouldn't be hitting anyways. Now, with that said, if you're going to go on a road trip and you're going to spend days and hundreds of miles on this trike, yeah, it's worth it to get in there and fine tune the results. And that's usually 1 or 2 turns of that preload collar. But understand, we ask you questions when you're placing the order: your weight, passenger weight, luggage weight, how often you carry a passenger, how often you carry that luggage, so we can find you a happy medium that, most people get these shocks and install them and never put hands on them again, with or without a passenger, with or without luggage.
Yeah. So there's a universal rule that shocks need to sag 1/3 of the travel.
That's right. And, if these have 4 inches of travel, they're going to sag over an inch. So you take a 13-inch shock, which is the factory length shock, and it's sagging over an inch. This gentleman's factory suspension is sagging about a 1/2 inch, right?
Yeah.
So if he throws our shocks, just direct replacement of our shocks on there, his rear end is going to sit lower than factory ride height. Now, when you do that, it throws off the geometries. It's just like if you've ever ridden a passenger on like a 4-wheeler or a 3-wheeler or a small ATV, makes it more difficult to steer. So you don't want the rear end of these trikes sagging at all under any circumstance. If you have an older model that has air shocks, you know exactly what I mean. When those shocks leak down and that rear end sagging, makes it much more difficult to steer, which on a trike is a push-pull, and that can fatigue you over time. So the reason we recommend a lift kit with our shocks is because it maintains stock or more or higher ride height. They supplement the ride quality, because not only does it lift the rear, it increases the angle of the shock or optimizes the angle of the shock, and it keeps you from dragging pipes, gives you more ground clearance, and in particular, keeps it easier to steer or makes it easier to steer. So the reason we suggest a lift kit with our shocks is so that the ass end doesn't drag. Yeah. Full stop. That's it.
We're going to add one more question here, and it's about suspension. So we're just going to add on to what we were just talking about. We have a question from Rick. So I used your lift brackets on my 2016 Tri-Glide in order to raise the rear end up a little while still using the OEM air adjustable shocks. Would I need to use the 13-inch next gen or the 14-inch next gen shocks?
That's a good question. So on these 2009 to 2025 trikes, they all have 13-inch shocks. Mm-hmm. So our standard lift kit is compatible with factory length shocks or aftermarket shocks that are the same length. since he already has a lift kit for 13-inch shocks, he would go with 13-inch aftermarket shocks and they would fit just the same. Now, a follow-up question may be, well, what's the benefits to a 13 or a 14-inch shock? And here's the thing. The 14-inch next-gen shocks have 4 inches of travel. Like I said earlier, the 13-inch shocks we offer have also 4 inches of travel.
Yeah.
That's maximum travel clearance will allow. If we give you more travel than that, you're going to start bottoming out tires and the fenders, and you don't want that. Well, then what's the benefit? Why would I choose a 14 over a 13? Well, the 14 does have a taller shock body. And if you've ever seen like external reservoir shocks, for example, those external reservoirs just house additional nitrogen. And nitrogen, you know, your suspension performance can fade just like your brakes. You know, if you're overusing your brakes, you're on the tail of a dragon, you're just riding them brakes out, performance goes away temporarily until they cool off.
Yeah.
Say you're headed towards the Arctic Circle and you're going to spend a few hundred miles on an unpaved road. That extra nitrogen, that extra nitro capacity of the 14-inch shocks could benefit you. But for most people, it's overkill.
Yeah.
Most people are going to benefit the most from the 13-inch shocks paired with the lift kit, but there's no harm in going with 14s either. They offer the identical ride quality, all have lifetime warranty, basically the same shock. The 14 just has a little more nitro in it. That's it. It's that simple. So if you're somebody that's going to spend a lot of time on very rough roads, go with the 14s. If you don't want to be handcuffed to a 14-inch link and you want to be able to use the standard lift kit, you go with the 13s. 13 by far the most popular option. And just to give you a little backstory, when we were developing these shocks, we thought that we had to go to a 14 to have 4 inches of travel, because why doesn't anybody else have 4 inches of travel? We wondered.
Yeah.
Because, you know, suspension quality can be measured, you know, almost wholly in how much travel those shocks offer you. So we quickly realized, hey, we can get 4 inches of travel out of our 13-inch shock. But at that point, we had already developed 14-inch shocks.
Yeah.
So, we just left them out there that, you know, we can't educate everyone on the differences or the similarities, you know, which there are way more similarities than differences when it comes to 13 versus 14 next gens. So we just leave them out there. Everyone's satisfied with the 14s. Everyone's satisfied with the 13s. You wouldn't know the difference either way. But if you call me and you ask for my suggestion, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the 13-inch with lift kit.
And as we mentioned earlier, we do answer every comment that is left on our YouTube channel. So if you have questions or if you want a question answered in a future video, if y'all like this kind of video, let us know in the comments below. We'll be glad to answer further questions for you guys and make another video. Mm-hmm. We appreciate you watching and commenting. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you'll know when the next video comes out. Thank you for watching. Ride safe out there.